Sarah had been dreaming about this day for a long time. For months, she had been saving every penny she could, cutting back on little luxuries, skipping dinners out, and making careful calculations to see if she could finally afford a decent, reliable car for her family. Being a single mother was never easy, and every day came with challenges that most people didn't see. Between dropping her kids off at school, working long hours, and managing the household on her own, she often felt exhausted and stretched thin. But she was determined to give her children the life they deserved, a life where they could feel secure and cared for. And today, she told herself, was going to be a step toward that goal. The car dealership was in a busy part of town. Its shiny glass windows reflected the morning sun, making the place look like a palace of luxury and opportunity. Rows of polished cars gleamed under the bright lights, each one sparkling like it was calling out to someone who could afford them. Sarah took a deep breath before pushing open the door. The familiar jingle of the bell above the entrance rang in her ears, and for a moment, she imagined herself walking confidently through the showroom as if she belonged there, even though the thought made her stomach twist with nervousness. As soon as she stepped inside, she felt a little out of place. The floor was spotless, and the cars were arranged perfectly, each one looking like a prize in a showcase. She noticed the salespeople immediately, well-dressed men and women moving briskly, speaking with confident smiles, and attending to customers who seemed to float through the showroom without a care in the world. Sarah's own outfit, a modest blouse and worn jeans, felt suddenly inadequate in the polished environment. She tried to push the feeling aside, reminding herself that she had earned the right to be here. "Good morning. How can I help you today?" A young man approached her, his smile friendly but measured, as if he had to carefully assess everyone who walked in. "I'm looking for a reliable car. Something safe for my kids, something I can trust," Sarah said, her voice steady even though her heart was beating faster than usual. She knew what she could afford, and she wasn't looking for a flashy sports car or anything extravagant. She just wanted something dependable. The young man nodded, but there was a flicker of doubt in his eyes. "Of course, ma'am. Do you have a budget in mind?" "Yes, I do," Sarah replied, keeping her tone confident. "I've saved enough for a down payment, and I have a monthly budget that I can manage." He glanced at her, then back at a computer screen behind the counter. "I'll see what we have that fits your needs." His words were polite, but there was something in his manner that made Sarah feel slightly uneasy, like he didn't quite believe she could really buy anything here. While he typed, Sarah wandered through the showroom, looking at the rows of cars. Each vehicle seemed perfect and untouchable, shiny and smooth as if it had never been used. She imagined herself behind the wheel of a car that could take her and her children on weekend trips, to soccer games, and to family gatherings without worrying about breakdowns or repairs. Her heart swelled with hope. After a few minutes, the salesperson returned. "Well, we have a few options that might work. But, to be honest, some of them are a bit above your stated budget. Are you sure about your numbers?" Sarah felt a twinge of frustration. She had expected to be asked about her budget, but the way he said it made her feel judged. She took a deep breath and reminded herself not to take it personally. "I'm sure," she said firmly. "Please show me what you have." He nodded, though she noticed the slight hesitation in his movements. He led her to a few mid-range vehicles, cars that were nice but nothing extravagant. Sarah listened carefully to his descriptions, asked questions about safety features and fuel efficiency, and tried to keep her optimism alive. She even tested one of the cars, driving it slowly around the dealership's small parking lot. For a moment, she felt the thrill of possibility, imagining herself in the car with her children, their laughter filling the air. But the hope was short-lived. As she returned to the showroom, she noticed the change in the salesperson's attitude. His polite smile seemed strained, and he began to make excuses about why certain cars might not work for her. A manager appeared nearby, observing the interaction with a cool, measured gaze. Sarah suddenly felt the weight of judgment, the subtle message that she didn't really belong in this world of luxury cars. "Maybe you should consider something else," the manager suggested. "We do have some options, but honestly, you might want to look elsewhere. Our inventory is really geared toward clients with higher budgets." The words hit Sarah harder than she expected. She had known that she wasn't wealthy, but she had never felt so clearly that her financial situation was being used to make her feel small and insignificant. Her chest tightened, and her hands trembled slightly, though she kept her voice calm. "I appreciate your honesty," she said, trying to smile politely. "I'll take my business elsewhere." With that, she turned and walked toward the exit, her head held high even as her heart sank. She could hear the soft clink of the bell as the door closed behind her, and the bright sunlight outside felt both comforting and harsh, like a reminder that the world didn't always treat people fairly. She took a few deep breaths, trying to steady herself, and made her way to the car she had arrived in, a modest vehicle that had carried her safely all these years. As she drove home, memories of past struggles surfaced. She thought about the late nights working multiple jobs, the sacrifices she had made to put food on the table, and the constant worry about bills and school fees. But amidst the frustration, there was also a quiet pride. She had made it this far on her own. She had faced obstacles that many people wouldn't understand and had never given up on providing for her children. By the time she pulled into her driveway, Sarah's mood had shifted slightly. The encounter at the dealership had been humiliating, yes, but it also reminded her why she worked so hard every day. She wasn't defined by someone else's judgment or by the cars she could or couldn't buy. Her worth wasn't measured in luxury or appearances, it was in the love, care, and resilience she showed for her children and herself. Inside, her kids ran to greet her, their smiles brightening the dim evening. Sarah hugged them tightly, letting their energy lift her spirits. For a moment, all the stress melted away, replaced by the simple joy of being with the people who mattered most. She told them about her day, leaving out the harshest details, but emphasizing the lesson she had learned, that life would sometimes challenge you, but you could meet those challenges with courage and dignity. That night, as Sarah tucked her children into bed, she reflected on the incident. She knew that tomorrow was a new day, and that one setback didn't define her journey. She made a silent promise to herself: she would keep working, keep striving, and keep believing that better days were ahead. Whatever obstacles came her way, she would face them head-on, with the same determination that had carried her this far. As she lay in bed later that night, exhaustion mixed with resolve, Sarah realized something important. The dealership had tried to make her feel small, but they hadn't succeeded. She was still strong, still capable, and still deserving of her dreams. And no matter how long it took, she would find a way to reach them. The morning after the dealership incident, Sarah woke up with a mix of exhaustion and determination. She could still feel the sting of embarrassment from the previous day, the way the salespeople had looked at her as if she didn't belong, as if her dreams weren't important. Yet, lying in bed and listening to her children's soft breathing in the next room, she reminded herself that life had never been easy. She had faced challenges before, and she had overcome them. This was just another hurdle, one she intended to leap over. After a quick shower and a simple breakfast, she sat at the kitchen table with a notebook in front of her. Sarah liked to plan her days meticulously. Every dollar mattered, every hour had to be accounted for. Today, she decided, would be a day of reflection and preparation. She wrote down her thoughts about the dealership, not to dwell on what had happened, but to understand her feelings. She wanted to turn her frustration into motivation. "I can't let one place make me feel less than I am," she whispered to herself, tapping the pen against the paper. "I've done so much for my kids. I deserve a chance." She thought back to her life before becoming a single mother. There had been a time when she had lived comfortably with Marcus, her ex-husband. Life had seemed easier then. They had gone on vacations, celebrated birthdays in style, and never had to worry about the bills that now seemed to follow her relentlessly. But that life had ended, not because of money, but because of differences that couldn't be reconciled. The divorce had been messy, filled with quiet heartache and occasional arguments, but ultimately, it had been necessary. Marcus had gone on to build his business empire, becoming a billionaire, while Sarah had chosen the path of independence, raising her children with love and resilience. Even though the past had its pains, Sarah refused to dwell there. She believed that her current struggles were a testament to her strength, not a reflection of her failure. She thought about all the nights she had stayed up late, working extra shifts, helping her children with homework, and managing household expenses. She remembered the countless times she had told herself that things would get better, that she would rise above the difficulties, and that she would provide her kids with stability and happiness. By mid-morning, Sarah felt a renewed sense of purpose. She decided to go for a walk around the neighborhood to clear her mind. As she stepped outside, the crisp morning air filled her lungs, and the sounds of the city surrounded her: children playing, neighbors chatting, cars driving past. It was a familiar, comforting rhythm, one that reminded her of the life she was building for her family. During her walk, she ran into her best friend, Lisa, who lived a few houses down. Lisa was cheerful, with an energy that could lift anyone's spirits. Seeing Sarah's thoughtful expression, she immediately knew something had happened. "You look like you've got the weight of the world on your shoulders," Lisa said with a teasing smile. "What's going on?" Sarah sighed, explaining the events at the dealership the day before. She described the polite dismissal, the manager's suggestion that she might want to look elsewhere, and the lingering feeling of being judged simply for being a single mom. Lisa listened carefully, nodding in understanding. "That's terrible," she said. "People can be so blind to real effort. They see money, not heart." Sarah smiled weakly. "I know. But I can't let it get to me. I have to focus on what I can control: my work, my kids, and my goals. I won't let one place define me." Lisa's eyes brightened. "That's the spirit. You've done so much for your kids, Sarah. They see your strength every day, even if some people don't. And remember, one setback isn't the end. It's just a detour." Encouraged by Lisa's words, Sarah continued her walk, thinking about the detours she had faced throughout her life. She remembered the time her car had broken down on a rainy evening, leaving her stranded while her kids sat in the back seat, tired and hungry. She remembered juggling bills that seemed impossible to pay, and the sleepless nights worrying about whether she was doing enough for her children. And yet, through every challenge, she had persevered. Each obstacle had made her more resourceful, more patient, and more determined. As she walked, Sarah's thoughts turned to the future. She imagined what life could be like if she managed to buy a reliable car. It wasn't just about luxury, it was about freedom and security. With a dependable vehicle, she could take her children on weekend trips, visit relatives without stress, and handle emergencies with ease. She could finally feel a sense of control in a world that often felt unpredictable. By the time she returned home, Sarah felt a sense of clarity. She had processed her feelings, reflected on her life, and strengthened her resolve. But she also knew that motivation alone wasn't enough; she needed a plan. She sat down at her small desk, opening her laptop, and began researching different car options. She made a list of dealerships that were known for treating customers with respect, and she calculated her budget carefully, making sure she could afford the monthly payments without compromising her family's basic needs. While reviewing her plan, she also allowed herself a moment of gratitude. She thought about her children, who brought joy and purpose to her life every day. She thought about her friends, like Lisa, who supported her without judgment. And she thought about herself, recognizing the courage it took to face life head-on, to keep going even when the world seemed unfair. In the afternoon, Sarah took some time to focus on her children's needs. She helped them with homework, prepared a simple but healthy lunch, and listened to their stories about school. Their laughter and energy lifted her spirits, reminding her that no matter what challenges she faced, she was never alone. The small moments of connection and love gave her strength and reminded her why she worked so hard every day. Later, she decided to reward herself with a short walk to the park nearby. She sat on a bench, watching other families play and enjoying the sunshine. She reflected on how far she had come and how much she had grown. The dealership incident still stung, but it no longer had the power to define her day. She had chosen to see it not as a failure, but as a lesson and opportunity to reinforce her self-worth and determination. As evening approached, Sarah returned home and began preparing dinner. She hummed softly while cooking, thinking about the day ahead. Tomorrow was another opportunity to move forward, another chance to take steps toward her goal. She reminded herself that life wasn't about avoiding challenges, it was about facing them with courage, learning from them, and continuing to move forward. Before bedtime, she sat quietly in the living room, sipping a cup of tea and reflecting on her journey. She thought about the lessons she had learned, that judgment from others doesn't define her, that persistence and hard work are invaluable, and that her love for her children was a source of endless strength. She felt a sense of peace, knowing that she had faced her emotions honestly and had emerged stronger. Finally, as she tucked her children into bed, Sarah whispered a promise to herself. She would not let society's standards, the judgment of strangers, or the difficulties of life diminish her spirit. She would continue to strive for her dreams, no matter how long it took, and she would do so with dignity, courage, and love. That night, Sarah fell asleep feeling determined. She knew challenges would continue to arise, but she also knew that she had the inner strength to face them. The dealership incident had been painful, but it had also reminded her of who she was, a resilient, loving, and capable mother who would never give up on herself or her children. And with that thought in her heart, she drifted into a peaceful sleep, ready to face the next day with renewed hope and unwavering determination. The morning sun streamed through the curtains as Sarah woke up, feeling a quiet sense of determination. After yesterday's reflections and planning, she was ready to face the day with renewed energy. She had a list of errands to run, and one of the first things on her agenda was to visit a small grocery store near the main street. It was a short drive from her neighborhood, but even small trips could be stressful in her old car, which often hesitated when starting or braking. Still, she reminded herself that each step, no matter how small, was progress. As she stepped out of her driveway, the familiar sounds of the neighborhood greeted her, children playing on the sidewalks, neighbors greeting one another, and the distant hum of traffic. Sarah's mind wandered briefly to yesterday's experience at the dealership. Though it had been humiliating, she had chosen not to dwell on it. Instead, she focused on what she could control, which included taking care of her children and keeping her life moving forward. Driving toward the grocery store, she noticed the steady flow of cars on the road, most of them ordinary, just like her own. Then, suddenly, her eyes caught something that made her freeze for a moment. A sleek, silver Rolls-Royce slowly pulled up beside her at a traffic light. Its polished body gleamed in the morning sun, and the engine purred smoothly, almost commanding attention from everyone nearby. Her heart skipped a beat when she recognized the driver. It was Marcus, her ex-husband. The same Marcus who had once shared her dreams, who had been a part of her life for years, and who had since become a billionaire entrepreneur. He smiled warmly at her from the driver's seat, a kind of calm confidence that could only come from someone used to success. Sarah blinked in surprise, unsure if she was seeing reality or letting her imagination run wild. The light turned green, and Marcus gestured for her to pull over at the next safe spot. Confused but curious, she did as he suggested, parking her car by the curb while her mind raced. What was he doing here? Did he know about the dealership incident? Was this a coincidence, or something more deliberate? Marcus stepped out of the Rolls-Royce with his usual poise, the car's doors closing softly behind him. "Sarah," he said, his voice calm and warm, yet filled with the authority that came naturally to him. "I heard about what happened yesterday. I wanted to make sure you're okay." Sarah felt a swirl of emotions: shock, surprise, and a faint spark of something she hadn't felt in years. "Marcus, what are you doing here?" she asked, trying to keep her tone steady while her mind raced to process the situation. "I thought you might need a hand," he replied, gesturing toward the dealership in the distance. "Not in a controlling way, but to make sure you get what you came for. I know how much you've worked for this." Sarah's hands tightened on the steering wheel. She had spent so long trying to maintain her independence, refusing help from anyone, even Marcus. And yet, the gesture was undeniably kind and thoughtful. She hesitated, unsure how to respond. I I don't know what to say," she admitted, her voice softening. Marcus smiled gently. "You don't have to say anything. I just want to help if you'll let me." After a brief pause, Sarah nodded. She felt a mix of curiosity and cautious hope. Together, they drove to the dealership. As they arrived, the familiar glass doors gleamed in the sunlight, and the polished cars lined up in neat rows, just as they had the day before. Sarah's stomach tightened slightly, remembering the dismissive looks and polite, yet cutting words. But now, with Marcus beside her, she felt a flicker of confidence she hadn't expected. Inside the showroom, the staff noticed the Rolls-Royce immediately. Whispers and glances exchanged across the floor, their eyes widening slightly as Marcus and Sarah approached. The young salesperson who had served Sarah the day before stepped forward, his expression a mixture of surprise and discomfort. "Good morning, ma'am," he said politely, trying to maintain composure. Marcus nodded to the man. "We're here for the same cars she inquired about yesterday," he said, his tone firm but courteous. "Let's see what options are available." The difference in treatment was immediate. The staff moved quickly, guiding them toward the vehicles with attention and respect. Sarah couldn't help but notice how dramatically their attitudes had changed. The polite dismissal she had received yesterday had vanished, replaced by eager service and detailed explanations. She felt a mixture of validation and discomfort. On one hand, it was satisfying to see her efforts being recognized. On the other, she realized how much appearances and status could influence how people treated others. Marcus spoke confidently, negotiating with the salespeople on Sarah's behalf. He asked about the car's features, financing options, and warranties, ensuring that Sarah's concerns and budget were considered. Through it all, he remained attentive to her needs, never speaking over her or taking control completely. Sarah observed him carefully, noticing the balance between authority and respect he maintained. As they moved through the showroom, Sarah began to feel a sense of empowerment. She had worked so hard to reach this point, and now, with Marcus's support, she could see her efforts paying off. She tested one of the cars, carefully noting how it handled, how safe it felt, and how practical it would be for her children. Marcus stood nearby, offering advice when asked but letting her make the final decisions. The staff continued to assist them, clearly impressed by Marcus's presence but also noticing Sarah's clear understanding of her needs. She asked questions confidently, compared options, and considered the financial implications carefully. It was a different experience from yesterday, one where her voice mattered, where her concerns were heard and addressed. At one point, Marcus glanced at her and smiled. "You've done your homework," he said quietly. "You know what you want and what you need." "That's impressive." Sarah felt a warm glow of pride. Despite the embarrassment and judgment of yesterday, she was reminded of her own strength and intelligence. She had faced challenges before, and this was just another example of her resilience. Finally, after careful consideration, They selected a car that fit Sarah's needs perfectly. It was reliable, safe, and within her budget. The staff efficiently processed the paperwork, and Sarah couldn't help but notice the stark contrast from the previous day. She felt a mix of relief, satisfaction, and empowerment. As they stepped outside, Marcus handed her the keys. "This is yours," he said simply. "You've earned it." Sarah's eyes welled up with tears, not from wealth, not from status, but from the recognition of her efforts and the acknowledgement of her perseverance. She took the keys with a shaky hand, feeling a mixture of gratitude and pride. Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I didn't expect. I mean, this is more than I imagined." Marcus smiled warmly. "You deserve it. And I'm glad I could help." As Sarah settled into the driver's seat, she felt a sense of freedom and accomplishment. The dealership incident from yesterday seemed like a distant memory, replaced by the realization that persistence, preparation, and self-respect had carried her forward. Marcus watched her start the engine, the car's smooth purr filling the air. "Remember," he said gently, "this is your achievement. I just helped along the way. You've done all the hard work." Sarah nodded, smiling through tears. She realized that while wealth could change how others treated her, it was her own strength and determination that truly mattered. She had faced judgment, humiliation, and doubt and had come out stronger on the other side. As they drove away from the dealership together, Sarah felt a renewed sense of hope. Life would continue to have challenges, but she knew she could face them with courage and resilience. The experience also reminded her of the importance of support, not as a crutch, but as a reminder that even the strongest people sometimes benefit from a helping hand. That day marked a turning point for Sarah. She understood that setbacks did not define her, that judgment from others could be overcome, and that her efforts were worth recognizing. And most importantly, she realized that her journey of resilience, love, and determination was far from over. With her new car and a renewed sense of confidence, she was ready to embrace whatever the future held. Sarah had barely slept the night after the unexpected visit from Marcus. Even as she drifted off, her mind replayed the events at the dealership, the way Marcus had shown up, the Rolls-Royce gleaming in the morning sun, and the way the staff had suddenly treated her with respect. She had felt a mix of relief, pride, and surprise, but also a lingering question: why did she feel conflicted about receiving help? She had always prided herself on independence, and yet, for the first time in a long while, she realized that accepting support didn't diminish her accomplishments. It simply allowed her to move forward more effectively. That morning, she woke early, energized and contemplative. The sun poured into her kitchen as she prepared breakfast for her children. The house smelled of warm toast and fresh coffee, and her children's laughter filled the space, a sound that always reminded her why she worked so tirelessly. They were her motivation, her purpose, and the reason she refused to give up, no matter how many obstacles life placed in her path. After the morning routine, she decided to take her new car out for a proper drive. It wasn't just a vehicle, it was a symbol of her resilience, of the many hours of work, sacrifice, and careful planning she had invested in her family's future. Driving along the tree-lined streets, she felt a sense of pride swell in her chest. She had earned this. She had faced judgment, pushed through embarrassment, and still managed to reach a goal she had dreamed of for months. By mid-morning, Sarah found herself near the same dealership that had caused her so much frustration just 2 days before. She wasn't planning on visiting, she had already purchased the car, but something inside her urged her to go inside. She wanted to see the staff's reactions, to witness the difference, and perhaps, in some small way, reclaim her dignity. Walking into the showroom, she was immediately aware of the polished environment, the gleaming cars, and the meticulously dressed staff. But this time, she wasn't intimidated. She had faced humiliation before, and she had emerged stronger. Today, she was not just a customer, she was a woman who had earned respect through her hard work and perseverance. The salesperson who had helped her yesterday noticed her immediately, his expression shifting from recognition to surprise. "Good morning, ma'am," he said cautiously, his smile less confident than it had been when Marcus was present. Sarah returned the greeting politely. "Good morning. I just wanted to stop by," she said calmly. "No business today, just a visit." Before the young man could respond, Marcus arrived in his Rolls-Royce, the familiar hum of the engine announcing his presence. He parked carefully, and together they walked into the showroom. The staff exchanged glances, their whispers barely concealed, and Sarah noticed how the tone of the room had changed once again. Where yesterday she had been dismissed, and 2 days ago she had been ignored entirely, now she was approached with deference, as if her presence alone commanded attention. Marcus spoke first, his voice calm and measured. "We're here to review some options for a friend," he said smoothly, nodding towards Sarah. "Please show us what you have available." The salesperson nodded quickly, clearly eager to comply. "Of course, sir. Right this way." As they moved through the showroom, Sarah observed the contrast between the staff's behavior now and the treatment she had received alone. It was stark and almost uncomfortable. She realized, with a mix of disappointment and insight, that people often judged her not on her effort or her character, but on appearances and connections. The recognition she had received with Marcus by her side wasn't about her, it was about status. Yet, she refused to let it diminish her own achievements. She had earned her new car on her own terms, and that mattered more than anyone's opinion. Marcus guided her gently, allowing her to ask questions and inspect the vehicles. He didn't dominate the conversation or overshadow her. Instead, he provided support where needed, offering advice and clarification without ever taking control. Sarah noticed how he balanced authority and respect, and she felt a quiet admiration for his approach. It reminded her that true support doesn't diminish independence, it enhances it. At one point, a manager approached, looking slightly uncomfortable as he recognized Sarah. "Good morning, ma'am," he said carefully. "Welcome back." Sarah smiled politely, keeping her composure. "Good morning. I just wanted to see the showroom again." "No pressure, no purchase necessary today," she replied. The manager nodded, glancing briefly at Marcus. "Of course," he said, his tone slightly more respectful than before. As they moved toward the mid-range vehicles that Sarah had considered, she began to notice subtle gestures of courtesy she had never experienced previously. The staff opened doors for her, explained features in detail, and answered every question attentively. Sarah's heart swelled with a mix of satisfaction and reflection. She realized that while wealth and status could influence how people treated you, true self-worth came from perseverance, preparation, and confidence. Marcus watched her carefully, nodding in approval as she asked questions, compared options, and evaluated the vehicles thoughtfully. "You're thorough," he said quietly, as if acknowledging a strength that others had overlooked. "You know exactly what you want and what you need." Sarah smiled faintly. "It's not about wanting something extravagant. I just want something reliable, something that will keep my kids safe and help me manage daily life. That's all." Marcus nodded. "And that's more than fair. And it's exactly what you should get." They spent time reviewing several vehicles, carefully comparing their features, safety ratings, fuel efficiency, and overall practicality. Sarah felt empowered as she asked questions and made decisions, realizing that she had grown in confidence and knowledge since the first visit. The humiliation of being dismissed alone seemed distant now, replaced by a sense of mastery over her choices. Finally, after thorough consideration, they selected a car that fit Sarah's needs perfectly. The staff, now fully attentive and professional, processed the paperwork efficiently. Sarah felt a deep sense of accomplishment. This time, she was not simply a client, she was a woman who had faced judgment, maintained her dignity, and made informed decisions. As they walked outside, Marcus handed her the keys once again. "This is yours," he said, smiling gently. "You've earned it your way, your effort, your persistence." Sarah's eyes glistened with tears. Not tears of wealth or privilege, but of validation and recognition for her own hard work. She understood, more clearly than ever, that the respect she deserved wasn't given by others, it was earned by living with courage, perseverance, and integrity. Driving away from the dealership, Sarah reflected on the day's events. She realized that power dynamics often shifted based on appearances, but she had proven that her own strength, independence, and preparation mattered most. The dealership incident, which had once felt humiliating, now served as a valuable lesson. The world might judge superficially, but true self-worth comes from within. Marcus glanced at her from the passenger seat. "How do you feel?" he asked. Sarah took a deep breath, smiling softly. "I feel stronger. More confident. I realize that other people's opinions don't define me. And I know that I can handle whatever comes next." Marcus nodded approvingly. "Exactly. You've always been capable. Today just reinforced it." The rest of the day passed with a sense of quiet triumph. Sarah took her children on a short drive, showing them the car she had chosen. Their excitement and joy were infectious, filling her with warmth and pride. She realized that while material things like cars could be symbols, the true value lay in the effort, persistence, and love that brought them into her life. That evening, as she prepared dinner and listened to her children share stories from their day, Sarah felt a profound sense of fulfillment. The dealership had attempted to belittle her, but she had emerged stronger, wiser, and more confident. The experience had taught her about resilience, dignity, and the importance of self-worth. As she tucked her children into bed, she reflected quietly on the lessons of the day. She understood now that challenges were not barriers to success but opportunities to demonstrate strength. She had been judged, dismissed, and underestimated, but she had faced it all with grace and determination. And in the end, she had not only achieved her goal but had grown in confidence and self-respect. That night, Sarah fell asleep with a heart full of hope and determination. She knew that life would continue to present obstacles, but she also knew that she possessed the inner strength to face them. The dealership incident, once a moment of embarrassment, had become a symbol of her resilience, a reminder that she was capable, deserving, and unstoppable. The morning sun shone brightly through Sarah's bedroom window, casting warm light across the room. Today felt different. There was a sense of calm confidence in the air, a quiet assurance that came from the events of the past few days. The humiliation she had felt at the dealership, the uncertainty of asking for help, and the unexpected arrival of Marcus, all of it had led her to this point. And now, as she rose from bed, she felt ready to face life fully, without hesitation or doubt. She moved quietly through the house, careful not to wake her children. The smell of fresh coffee and warm toast filled the kitchen as she prepared breakfast, her mind busy reflecting on the lessons she had learned. She had always known that life would challenge her, but she had also learned that every challenge carried the potential to teach, to strengthen, and to reveal her own inner power. After breakfast, she sat with her children at the table, listening to their plans for the day. Their laughter and energy were contagious, and Sarah felt a swell of pride. Each small moment of connection reminded her why she worked so hard. Her determination was not just about survival, it was about giving her children a sense of security, love, and confidence in themselves. Once her children were off to school, Sarah decided to take her new car for another drive. This time, it wasn't just a matter of practical errands. She wanted to fully embrace the freedom and independence that this car symbolized. As she drove along familiar streets, she thought about how far she had come. The small car she had once relied on had carried her through countless challenges, but this new vehicle represented more than just reliability. It was a reward for her perseverance, her careful planning, and her refusal to give up. As she drove, Sarah reflected on Marcus's presence at the dealership. His arrival had been unexpected, yet it had shown her the importance of support not as a replacement for her own effort, but as a reminder that even the strongest people sometimes benefit from a helping hand. She realized that accepting help didn't mean she was weak, it meant she was wise enough to recognize opportunities that could enhance her life and the lives of her children. By mid-morning, Sarah returned home and decided to review her goals for the coming months. She opened her notebook and began writing, outlining plans for work, family, and personal growth. She wanted to ensure that the momentum she had gained over the past few days would not be lost. Every plan was realistic, rooted in her resources, and guided by her values. She thought about ways to save more efficiently, to provide enriching experiences for her children, and to invest in her own skills and confidence. As she wrote, she felt a growing sense of empowerment. The past week had taught her that life would always throw challenges her way, but she could navigate them with grace, intelligence, and determination. The incident at the dealership, which had once felt like a blow to her dignity, was now a lesson in resilience, self-worth, and strategic thinking. She had faced judgment, maintained her composure, and achieved her goal through effort, preparation, and the willingness to accept appropriate support. Later that afternoon, Sarah took her children for a short drive in their new car. The children's excitement was infectious. They marveled at the smooth ride, the safety features, and the spacious interior. Sarah smiled, feeling a sense of accomplishment that went far beyond the vehicle itself. This was a tangible reminder of what dedication and perseverance could achieve. She realized that while material things could symbolize success, the real reward lay in the journey, the growth, the lessons, and the bonds strengthened along the way. After returning home, Sarah spent some time organizing her household. She found satisfaction in creating order, making sure that every aspect of her life reflected the care and effort she put into it. As she worked, she reflected on how different her life had become over the years. From the struggles of single motherhood to the recent challenges at the dealership, every experience had shaped her into a more capable, confident, and self-aware individual. In the evening, Marcus called to check in. Their conversation was warm and respectful, filled with encouragement and thoughtful advice. He didn't offer solutions or take control, instead, he listened and guided, allowing Sarah to lead the conversation. She appreciated this approach, understanding that true support didn't overshadow her achievements, it complemented them. As the sun set, Sarah prepared dinner and settled into a quiet moment of reflection. She thought about the people who had supported her along the way, friends like Lisa, her children, and even Marcus. She realized that while personal effort was essential, community and connection also played a vital role in navigating life's challenges. Strength was not only about independence but also about knowing when to accept guidance and encouragement. After dinner, Sarah sat with her children on the couch, reading stories and sharing laughter. Their eyes sparkled with curiosity and joy, and she felt a profound sense of fulfillment. These moments reminded her that her efforts were not in vain. Every decision she had made, every obstacle she had faced, and every challenge she had overcome contributed to a stable, loving environment for her children. Later that night, as she tucked her children into bed, Sarah reflected on the past week. She thought about the dealership incident, Marcus's unexpected arrival, and the journey of determination that had led her to this point. She realized that life would continue to present obstacles, but she had developed the resilience, confidence, and perspective to face them successfully. She had learned that setbacks were not failures, they were opportunities to grow, to demonstrate strength, and to reaffirm self-worth. After her children were asleep, Sarah sat quietly with a cup of tea, gazing out the window at the night sky. She reflected on the lessons of perseverance, dignity, and empowerment she had learned. The dealership incident, which had once caused embarrassment and frustration, had ultimately become a defining moment in her journey. It had shown her the importance of self-respect, strategic thinking, and the willingness to accept support when it enhanced her independence. As she sipped her tea, Sarah felt a deep sense of gratitude for her children, for her friends, and for the experiences that had shaped her into the person she had become. She understood that success was not defined solely by material possessions or wealth, but by resilience, integrity, and the ability to navigate life's challenges with grace. Before going to bed, Sarah wrote a brief note in her journal: "I am proud of how far I have come. I have faced challenges, maintained my dignity, and achieved my goals. I will continue to grow, learn, and persevere. My strength comes from within, and my love for my children fuels everything I do." Finally, as she lay down to sleep, Sarah felt a profound sense of peace. She knew that life would continue to have ups and downs, but she also knew that she possessed the inner strength, wisdom, and resilience to handle whatever came her way. The journey had been difficult, but it had also been deeply rewarding. She had transformed challenges into lessons, setbacks into growth, and judgment into motivation. In the quiet of the night, Sarah felt a sense of triumph. She had faced life's challenges with courage, determination, and dignity. She had embraced support without compromising her independence, and she had achieved her goal through effort, planning, and perseverance. She had not only purchased a car, she had affirmed her self-worth, empowered herself, and set an example for her children of resilience, integrity, and unwavering determination. As sleep finally overtook her, Sarah knew that her journey was far from over. But she also knew that she was ready for whatever the future held. With confidence in her abilities, pride in her accomplishments, and love in her heart for her children, she drifted into peaceful rest, prepared to meet each new day with strength, courage, and hope.